Okay, everybody, let's have a look at this infernal text. Infernal. Why infernal?
So many questions, no. We have.
Yeah. Inferno is hell, isn't it? Dante. Dante's great. Poem. Infernal. Hellish. So if it's like, it's feeling like hell to you, I understand. Infernal text. Alright. I'll just probably, for speed, I'll go through it and I'll try to explain each choice. And no doubt it will lead to questions and discussion. It's easy to be aware of the revolution brought about by the internal combustion engine. The effects of the revolution are part of our world. Well, let's have a look at the second one. The revolution, because it's second mention, isn't it? We've already mentioned it. The effects of, it's a particular bunch of effects that come from that particular revolution. So it's post-modification. It's effects, of course, millions, billions of effects in the world. But it's this particular group of effects. Now, just one thing to be clear on here. It's kind of obvious, but it's kind of not. Just because we got plurals, we can put a the in front of a plural group, can't we? So in this case, it's a bunch of effects. It's a particular unique. It doesn't have to be a unique single thing. It can be a unique set, a unique group. It's like those, isn't it? Remember right at the beginning I said these, this, that, those. If it's if you're wanting to do that with your language, you're going to be using a the. So in other words, you can use it for plurals. The effects. Those effects. So yeah, if we can put a sort of like a boundary around it and say, look, that's a unique group. Like I said, the students in this room. Now I'm post-modifying that to the people in this room. And there's only one group of people in this room. Yeah? So you can have, point is, you can have the for plural. For plurals, no worries. And here's the case. And you can modify that plural group with post-modification to the point it's unique.
So first, look at this concept first.
It is easy to be aware of the revolution brought about by the internal combustion engine. The effects of the revolution are part of our world. Many of us own a car.
A car.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you wouldn't say the car here because you can't use it generically because you're saying most of us own, and you don't own a whole category of car, do you? You own a particular car. So we can't use the generic form here. We've got to and know something about pistons. Nothing, that's right. Because you're speaking generally, you're not talking about that piston, are you? So again, if we come back always to this basic function, are you going that piston? So the piston, the mechanism inside the engine, that kind of arm that moves up and down. Right? So we're not saying that piston, we're speaking generally about all pistons. And if you're speaking generally, the rule is for countable nouns, you make a plural. Plurals for general statements about countables with no article. Same with cylinders. Nothing. And now horsepower, uncountable, isn't it? Yeah. You're talking generally about horsepower, and horsepower is uncountable. And maybe it's time to go back. Let's go back to our overview.
But how come the horsepower sometimes at 1,500 horsepower, 1,000?
Yeah,
horsepower?
sure. Yeah, but you don't say horsepowers. You always say horsepower.
Oh.
Yeah, so you don't ever pluralise it.
Because I think it's like water, energy.
That's right, it is. It's like a substance or an element.
I see.
So we're in here at the moment. you'll see this on your next page or the next page, isn't it, this diagram, but it is good for you to write it out, because writing it out, you process it, you think about it. It's that one there. So once we've learned our 7 rules for when it makes something unique, then we'll use this. But I think it's a good moment to use it now, because horsepower, we're not talking about a unique particular horsepower. There's no such thing. We're speaking generally, so we're down to this question straight away, aren't we? We answer it with a no. So we're here. Is horsepower countable? No. Therefore, no article. We're here. I think we've got 5 of these 7. We can start putting in the noun, turn the handle of the machine and see what pops out. It's time to start using this thing, because ultimately this is what you're going to have to do, you know, with all your decisions. It is also to be aware of the revolution.
Just one, but before
Yeah. Nothing, because we're here. Yeah, it's uncountable, and we're talking generally. It is also to be aware of the revolution brought about by the electronic tube. That's very similar to sentence 1, isn't it? It's a particular revolution, post-modified. It's like which was brought about. So we're using a relative clause here to narrow it down to a particular technological revolution. The electronic tube, generic, just like the internal combustion engine, a particular type of invention.
So it's the electronic
Yeah.
tube.
You're right, Rena, your pronunciation. The, isn't it? Not the, because it starts with a vowel.
Yeah.
The electronic. And, I don't know, remember a few weeks ago, linkage, vowel to vowel linkage? The electronic tube. There's a little yip in there which makes it easier to say. The electronic tube. Don't make it a big y, the yellow, I can't even do it. The yellow, yeah, the yellow electronic tube. Just a little one. The yellow electronic tube. Most of us own 0 radios. Yeah, so let's have a look on our chart. Where are we? Are we talking about that radio? No, we're talking generally. Is it countable? Yes. Is it singular? No, we're talking about many radios. There we are. No? Nothing. Same with the next one, isn't it? Television sets. We're talking generally, we're not unique. These things are countable. We're not talking singular. We're here. No. Okay. And there's something about waves and electrical interference. Right. Are we talking about that electrical interference, or are we talking generally?
Generally.
Right. So our answer is no. Interference. Is it countable?
No.
No. We don't see interferences, so we're here.
So it's nothing?
Nothing.
We are cracking our head to pull out what to put there.
Generic?
No. Generics. Let's just have a look. Generics, that's right. You'll only use, if you go back to generics, you can see it in the first line. The definite article is sometimes used generically to indicate that a countable noun or noun phrase refers to an implied type of something. So you can only use it for countable nouns. Yeah.
For example.
That's an important point. And so is the next one, which I've mentioned, but we'll just recycle it. In such usage, the noun is always, or the noun phrase is always in the singular. So, yeah, you can't use it for uncountables. Alright. Unfortunately, it is hard to be aware of the chemical revolution. Yeah, now, we had an interesting discussion at this table here on this one. There's no post-modification here, is there?
I think it's because Johnny, that was the same thing in our table, because
Yeah.
we can say there are so many revolutions, and
Yeah.
the chemical revolution is narrowed down the
Yeah, absolutely, honey. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We've made it unique, haven't we?
Yeah.
With modification. Now, it's not post-modification, it's not after the noun, it's before the noun. So, the point is, at times, you can, with pre-modification, you can narrow something down to a unique point. Post-modification will often do it, and most of the time, it's post-modification that will do it. Not all post-modification will do it. So it gets tricky. Let's have a look at some other cases. Let's take revolution. Now we've had a number of post-modifications, revolution brought about there, electronic tube, etc. What if I put this in front of it?
It's making small groups, so that means.
Now these are before the noun, aren't they? Pre-modification. But they still, all of these are narrowing down. So let's look at the metaphor of narrow down. Something's getting narrower, and if it gets to one thing, yeah, all possible revolutions, millions of them, all different kinds, political, social, cultural, biological, whatever. Just write that phrase again. We're narrowing down, narrow to this point. If your answer is yes to that, you put a the. Right? Now, it could happen because of post-modification, but here we could see it happening with pre-modification. Now, we can get a bit fussy and we can say, all right, well, how many Russian revolutions were there? Well, there were two, weren't there? 1905 and 1917. But, you know, generally when we think of Russian Revolution, we think of one, 1917. Cultural Revolution in China, one. French Revolution, well, the French have had many, actually. You know, but generally we think of the 1789 Revolution there. So the point is, you can, some pre-modification will do this as well. So I think this is one weakness in the chapter. I think they didn't describe this possibility. And it's an important element that you've got to consider. Basically, when you're modifying a noun, the question is, are you, with either pre or post modification, narrowing it down to a unique point? If your answer is yes, you put that. Now most of the time, post modification is doing this, but not all. Let's take students. Or students. Students. Hang on, what was it? Take student and I post-modify with of TAFE. Okay, all possible students in primary school, secondary school, university, etc. And I say, I post-modify with that of TAFE. Have I narrowed down to one student?
Yes.
No. There are still, 2,000 students walking around TAFE today here. So not all post-modification will necessarily do that. But most of the time it does. So if you're not sure, put your money on it and put a the, But if you want to be really, accurate and careful, you've got to think about every pre-modification and you've got to think about every post-modification. And the key question is it doing that?
So at the end we say it's a Russian Revolution.
That's right. Yeah, because all of these do that.
But we didn't use student of the day.
That's right. Here, we have to still say a student
of the day.
here, because we haven't narrowed it down.
John, what in that case? Suppose they said the Russian revolution of that era, they mentioned era of
Yeah.
revolution.
Well, we've already said the Russian Revolution. We've narrowed it down to one. You
Yeah,
could
but
say,
if they want to specify...
if you want to be more accurate, the Russian Revolution of 1917, the Russian Revolution of 1905, is saying actually which one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the sense, they are talking about particular event happened on that year.
Yeah. It won't change the use of that one. You've already decided to
Yeah.
put that. Okay. of the chemical revolution because its products are hidden. Yet this revolution is important because it is, interesting one here, the basis.
Yes.
The basis. Now, you can almost put this in your bag of special nouns. It is the basis for the other revolutions. So, if you think about the metaphor of this, it's like it's the foundation, isn't it? The base.
Yeah.
Now, this room has a base, doesn't it? This building has a base. How many bases are there? One.
Yeah.
You know, usually when we use this word in English, there's one base, isn't it? Now, all we're doing here, there's a base for this building, a foundation. It's only one. Now, we're just using it metaphorically here, and we're saying, okay, here's the base for these other technological revolutions. But it's still only one. So that word has a very strong tendency to be used as a unique thing, just because of its nature as that particular noun. So we'd almost go back to our rule number 2, isn't it? Special noun here. It's also being closely modified. It's a particular basis for the other revolutions. That brings up another issue. Often you can have something that gets a the for more than one reason. It might be because it's a special noun, but also because it's being modified. These reasons are what we call mutually exclusive. They're not separate. You can often have a the because of 2 or even 3 reasons. All you need is one reason, and it will force you to do the. But you can sometimes have the because there are multiple reasons operating. Alright, an automobile could not run. You could say the automobile. You could do that. However, I'll just write up a list that I think that should be your order of preference. They're all okay, right? But in writing generally, that should be your order of choosing. When you want to speak generally about a category or type of something, just use that order, right? It's just an order of naturalness, right? So stylistically, what sounds better? So, automobile, if I were running this, I'd say automobiles could not run without fuel. That's, if you do that, you'll just be safe. That works kind of every time. You can do this, which is what I would put, and that one, the generic, as I've said, has, you know, it's got a more restricted use, it's more formal. We tend to use it for species, and it's really hard to explain why sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it just doesn't. It feels really weird. So you are best to stick with that, and your second choice, this, only if you really have to go for that. Alright, so I'd go, yeah?
And with this singular here in this text.
Yeah, it's singular, so we can't use, that's
the
right,
first
we
one.
can't choose the first one here, can we? The rules of the game say no. But in natural, realistic environment, you'd do that. So an automobile could not run without fuel, which is a chemical. A car or an electronic tube could not be built. So same story again. You could put the, you know, if you put the, it's not wrong, but it wouldn't be the sort of more natural writing choice. Could not be built without. Now here, we're talking generally, we're not talking about a particular metal, are we? And metal, countable or uncountable? Right, we're here. And what we see is a list of substances, don't we? Chemical substances. So all of these, and most of them done for us, metal, fabric, adhesive, glass, paint, and plastics. Yeah, you could say plastic there. They've chosen to say plastics, they're just emphasising the different kinds of plastics, which are chemicals. We're speaking generally, we're not talking about that chemical. It's not post-modified. Or, now, you could say results of chemical processes, or you could say the results. You've got a bit of a choice here. Why have you got a choice? Because it's just sometimes it's how the writer's thinking about the topic. If I said it's the results of chemical processes, there are all the results of the chemical processes, and mentally I'm kind of putting a boundary around it, strong boundary, and I'm saying that group, right? But if I'm saying, the results, it's the results of chemical processes, and I'm not really concerned about putting a boundary around it, then I can say results with nothing.
Which are the
Yeah, now you've got moments where you can do that.
Which are the better if without or without?
Both equal, they are quite equal here. It really just depends on a writer choice. Now, so no doubt that idea of a choice is sort of confusing for you. I thought there were rules. And there are, but there are these sort of 1% kind of moments where you can sometimes do this. Usually you don't have this kind of choice, and things don't depend on how you think about it, but sometimes they do.
And also it depends within the context of.
That's right, it can, yeah. So, look, this is one, all of this is complex and subtle, isn't it? And this is why we do it fairly early in the course, so that as we come across lots of examples in writing and reading, we can talk about where a noun might fit, and if you do have these sorts of choices. We'll come across other examples where we might see this.
John,
Yeah.
if we think about the resource of chemical process, because we can get resource from various ways, if you
Yeah.
think that way and we put the there, if I think that way,
Yeah, you're saying,
it's again like narrowing
it's
down.
low, yeah. So by putting the boundary there, you
Yeah.
sort of say, it's this particular group of
Yeah.
results, But you don't actually have to, in this case, think of it like that. You can speak kind of more generally and kind of think of it more vaguely.
Oh,
So there are times when you've got that choice, which is quite tricky. All right. So if you're feeling more confused than ever, quite natural. This is complex territory. Alex.
The chemical revolution.
Chemical.
The chemical revolution.
Yeah.
In the middle of this paragraph.
Yeah.
Is this generic?
Yes. Well, it's also. No.
You say pre-modified, but.
Yeah, it's pre-modified. There's only one chemical revolution.
But we don't have this category pre-modified.
No, that's what I said. It's a weakness in the chapter. That really, look at these ones. Here's pre-modification too, and that chapter doesn't mention it, does it? They should. They just talk about post-modification, and it's a gap. I mean, I've used this chapter for a number of years now because I think it's the best treatment on articles, but that is one problem with it, that it doesn't cover this.
But we have this in the list of our categories for Article D. For Article D, pre-modifier, or it belongs to generic.
Well, I would say it's pre-modifying. Could you think it could be generic too? The chemical revolution. You could think of it generically as well, I guess. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Look, again, that could be a case of two reasons, not single reason why it's got a the. I think you could apply generic to that. Yeah. The dominant one for me is the fact that you've defined it and narrowed it down as a pre-modifier. But you could think of it like that, I think.
And in the bottom of this paragraph, the chemical revolution is the same case.
Well, that's an interesting one because we've already said, okay, we accept two rules. Why it's the,
It's previous.
and it's now previous mention as well, isn't it? So now we've got the for three reasons on that one. Yeah. So it's pre-modified, it's generic, it's previous mention. Yeah. So that's a nice example actually of how you can get three layers, three reasons.
And the
Yeah.
last question,
Yeah.
chemicals uncountable?
Chemical is not. No, you can say chemicals. That's countable. Yeah. Here it's working as an adjective. Chemical revolution. It's not a noun. It's an adjective.
No, I mean, which are chemicals.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. That is, we can tell by looking at it, it's got a plural, so it's countable. Yeah. So there, we're here, and we're here, aren't we? We're here. Because we're speaking generally, it's countable, it's plural, so we're there just with no articles. Yeah. All right. What we'll do is we will cover the next two rules, and then we've done the whole theory of it. Now, the chapter's very confusing. Just to totally confuse you, I've actually photocopied this wrongly, and it's out of order. So go to the very last page. For some reason, I'm sorry. The next page popped up as the last page. But that's because I knew that at this point you'd already been thoroughly confused. Right? And it wouldn't really matter. The very last page. However, I'm going to confuse you further. We need to go back. Sorry. Just underneath our exercise, we introduced the next rule. Shared knowledge. Yeah, 30.6. I think we just better read this one through. Often, the writer and intended readers share certain knowledge of the world because they belong to the same culture. Culture, in this sense, they mean very narrow or specialised culture. So, in other words, people in a similar profession with very specialised knowledge of something. Or it could be not a profession; it could be a sports group, or just people who share knowledge that other people don't. Thus, the writer will sometimes use a noun or noun phrase that has only one referent in the real world, believing that the readers already know about the uniqueness of this reference. And he or she will therefore use the definite article to mark the noun or noun phrase. Consider the following passage, for example, which begins a report, and look how specialised these people are. This is a report presented to a group of aerospace scientists and engineers at a NASA symposium. A conference. This paper, so this talk, presents the preliminary results from the Goddard University of New Hampshire cosmic ray experiment during the recent Pioneer 11 encounter with Jupiter, a spacecraft of Jupiter. Before continuing, however, I would like to say a few words about last page. The other, not another, Goddard experiment on Pioneer 10, the fluxgate magnetometer experiment. Getting very technical here. This experiment performed flawlessly. A flaw is a problem, so flawless, perfectly. Good one for critical thinking, a flaw. There's a flaw in your logic, there's a flaw in your argument. Very common collocation, and we don't need this kind of flaw. It's a flaw, there's a problem, there's a fault, an error. So fallacies, flaws. Throughout the encounter, and it observed a maximum magnetic field strength of 1.2 Gauss. Okay, now, it happens to be a fact that each of those italicized noun phrases in this passage has a unique real-world referent. There was only one Goddard University of New Hampshire cosmic ray experiment on Pioneer 11, only one Pioneer 11 encounter with Jupiter, etc. Of course, not everybody knows these facts, but in the author's immediate culture, that is, in the circle of fellow scientists and engineers, the ones being addressed in this case, these facts seem to be common knowledge. That's the key. Everyone in the group knows that each of the noun phrases in question has a unique referent. They already know. Consequently, even at first mention, that's key, even at first mention, the author marks these noun phrases with the definite article. So, that's because he's talking to that group. Let's imagine that they imagine now he's talking to a broader, more general audience of readers. The indefinite article might have been chosen instead. This paper presents the preliminary results from a Goddard University of New Hampshire cosmic ray experiment during a recent Pioneer 11 encounter with Jupiter. Before continuing, however, I'd like to say a few words about another Goddard experiment on Pioneer 10, a flux gate magnetometer experiment, blah blah. So that's because that speaker is assuming the audience doesn't know